people, I'm here today with a review of the new free Chitubox 1.6.5 update. And I don't know if I should start with the good or the bad. Actually, let's start with the bad because it might only be semi-bad right now. For me, it crashed more than a few times when I was trying to make this video review, working my way through it. And I've been reading, of course, a lot online. And some people are experiencing a lot of crashes. Some people are experiencing way less crashes, so your mileage may vary, but it is definitely not stable yet, and that's always the biggest problem. So with that out of the way, though, let's talk about some of the improvements. So there's some little stuff, let's just get out of the way. When you have more than one model on the plate and you select more than one, when you went to rotate them, you would then rotate each model separately. Now there's a button you can click. When you rotate them, they rotate around the central axis for whatever that's worth. After you've hollowed a model now, you can, instead of adding one hole at a time, which you could do before, you can now add multiple holes just by clicking the hole, and you don't have to click add a hole each time, so that's a little bit better quality of life. The other thing I actually like about adding holes, now you can choose whether the hole orients to the surface of the model, perpendicular to whatever surface you're on. If you use this function, you'll know it kind of wiggles all over the place. But you can also set it to be perpendicular to the build plate, and then it's a fixed direction. Sometimes that makes it easier to place a hole, sometimes not, and then you switch back to the old way. So those are two of the minor functions. There's one I'm out to lunch on a little bit, which is the autosave. For most people, because this program does crash, autosave seems great, right? So now you can set it for any time period you want. So those days of where you forget to save, like I've done a few times, and you'd work for 20 minutes and then it crashes and you lost everything. Yes, we'd like greater stability, but without greater stability, you now have an autosave function. My only fear there, and I haven't been using it long enough for this to happen, but I fear that it could, is that something wonky could happen. Maybe I even accidentally, you hit that delete button, it back still doesn't bring the model back for whatever reason. That's something they still need to fix. But if you hit that delete button and then all of a sudden you get an autosave, you could actually overwrite everything and lose everything. So what I recommend, keep this in mind, if you're using the autosave function, you have it turned on, remember to also every so often do a save as and save it as a different file name or in a different directory, that if the auto function, if you somehow delete or do something wonky and then it auto saves, you won't lose everything you've done on your model. So just keep that in the back of your head and thank me later when it actually happens. Let's talk about what I think. Well, let's keep going with the smaller stuff, and I'll save the amazing stuff, or the stuff for me that's amazing, for the end. So now when you go into support mode, if there's a little eyeball at the bottom of the screen, I'll have a screen running in here to show you instead of doing a separate video like I normally do. I'll just run it concurrently. When you click that eyeball, it now shows you all the support points where if you hit auto supports, it would generate supports. So theoretically, it's showing you where all the islands are. And it does a pretty good job. Now, when I ran through it, I was able, just eyeballing it because I'm very practiced, to spot 5 or 6 areas on the model where even at 100% density on the auto supports and with the angle set to anything less than 90 should get a support, it still missed spots. Is that the end of the world? No. Prusa Slicer misses spots. Formware misses spots. Right now, none of the auto supports generated by any of the programs works 100%. You always have to go back in and manually add. So I'm not gonna knock Chitubox. The auto support function is now way better than it used to be. So for those of you who like auto supports and liked Prusa over Chitubox, I haven't done a direct comparison yet, which I'll do in another video, where I actually can take the same model and the same orientation and do it in Prusa and new Chitubox and Formware and see how auto supports work. But the point is, it works better than it used to, for whatever that's worth to you. It also now, when generating auto supports, and sometimes when you're clicking them on, it'll give like a double ball joint support, which again, look around the floating box, you'll see. That can be really handy for getting tougher to reach spots, so that's a good improvement. There's the eyeball for, at the bottom of the screen, you clicks on and off those support points. And you can play with that by changing whether you're using light, medium, or heavy, change the density of the support, change the support angle, and see what it gives you. But even if you're just doing manual support placement like I do, and I'm not gonna use the auto support still, it gives you kind of a good starting point to eyeball. Like, not every spot there needs a support or an island, because some of them are what I call helper spots, where it just would help the model to have a support, but it's not necessarily essential. But it just gives you a place to start looking for those islands. So, it's not groundbreaking, but it's pretty good. And I like it. It's a good quality of life upgrade. Now I want to talk about what I think are the biggest improvements for me personally. And hopefully most people will agree with my opinion here. One is that on the settings screen, again, look around for floating box, I'll show you how to do it. You can now click an angle so that when you move your camera below that angle, all the supports, except for the tips, disappear. This is great. I have so many complex models that I do personally where sometimes it gets so congested with supports I'm placing on so many different little islands that my view becomes obscured, and placing new supports actually becomes tricky and becomes hard to spot. And when I go and validate something, if I missed a few spots and I go back into a sea of supports and try to find that spot, it can be difficult. Now all I have to do is rotate so I'm under the model at a certain angle. That can be anywhere from 90 all the way down to 1 degree. If you set it at 0, you're turning it off. But as soon as you tilt the camera below that angle, as you can see in the floating box here, boom, everything except the top tips of the supports disappears. Now you can see everything. This makes support placement way easier on a busy model. So this one's a big thumbs up. We needed this. They put it in. Awesome. The other huge one for me. Let's talk about another small one. Now when you click a support, you'll see when you click it, it becomes almost like X-ray view. It becomes transparent. So it makes it a little easier to place because you can see better exactly where you're placing it. So that's good. If you, let's say you were trying to support this elbow and is over the rest of the body, if you now click a support here where before it would drop onto the model, it'll still drop onto the model most times. Sometimes you'll get a ball joint that moves it off, which is great, but sometimes it still drops just on the model. But now, if you click that support and edit and drag it, it turns into a normal support. Yay, thank you. So what would happen, sometimes I'm looking close at a model, like zoomed way in, and I hit like 2 or 3 supports. Then I zoom back out and I realize, oh crap, they all dropped on the model. Then I have to go and delete those supports, and then I have to drop supports off another support, angle it up, bring it in. Not the end of the world, but it does take time. Now I can just drop 3 supports that are on the model, and then just drag them off. And I've got supports like the way I would do them if I'd hand placed the whole thing. So that's another big plus right there. And for me, maybe the biggest one out of all these is if you click edit and then click a support tip and then hold control down and click as many support tips as you want. They're all selected at the same time. Now, if you want to batch change the thickness, the contact depth, the thickness of the pillow, you can do that, right? This is groundbreaking to me because like I get some models from some Patreons that are pre-supported, and I might look and say, man, the supports are all in the right place, but half of them are actually too thin. They're not going to support the weight of the model where they're placed. I need to go in and manually change each one. Oftentimes I go through a pre-supported model from Patreon and I'm changing the contact thickness and the contact depth on half the supports or more. It drives me crazy. Now at least it'll be a lot faster. I can click 20 of them at once and then increase the thickness or increase that contact depth. That, for someone like me at least, and hopefully for all of you, anyone who does manual type supports or even auto supports, it's just going to cut your workflow. I mean, it's great. Think of this. Let's say you want to start with the auto support. You can now auto support, say you just run auto supports medium, all like 0.3 thickness or 0.4 thickness. But let's say the bottom 10 holding the model up, they need to be thick, like 0.6 or 0.8. You just click those ones at the bottom, those 10, hold control down, click them all, and then adjust the thickness. And boom, you just change them all. So to me, workflow-wise, this should be a huge time saver. Again, if it's not crashing, which it did for me, honestly, I got 6 crashes in just 1 hour. That's a lot. Other people have reported, some guy I think online had said he had been using it like for a day and only had 1 or 2 crashes. William Tatum, who's another support monkey like me, doing it for Patreons, he said he used it for like a day and a half with only a couple of crashes. Different experience than I had. And I have a strong computer, so I'm not sure what it is exactly. And then I saw some people posting online that for them it was crashing like when they did anything. So it might, your mileage may vary. It might depend on your computer, your graphics card, all your settings. I don't have enough details now to understand exactly why it's crashing, and maybe that's to do with, available memory and other programs you have running. Like hopefully someone with more computer knowledge than me will start testing this out and sort it out why it crashes. Maybe even the Chitubox developers themselves. But for now, crashing to the down point. Other than that, all these improvements are great. So what I would say is, whereas before on some of their updates, I've warned, like, don't use this update, stay with this. I think the quality of life improvements are so good here, you should definitely move to it, but with this caveat. You test it out. Use it for an hour or two or whatever, and if it's crashing a lot, then go back to something more stable. Unfortunately, if it's crashing too much, it won't be worth the quality of life upgrades. But for most people, even if it crashes for me like every once 15 or 20 minutes, well, I'll just save more often, because those, like your batch changing the supports and being able to look from underneath and get rid of basically the view of all the supports, that alone for me is going to be worth using this version. So I'm pretty excited they put a lot of stuff in here that was needed. They still need to fix that the undo button doesn't undo, like deleting your model and some weird stuff like that. Hopefully, they're coming out with the Chitubox Pro soon, and they actually have tapped me and said, would you beta test for us? So I'm really excited to get my hands on that, and hopefully it'll be like a really souped up version of what they just released with all the bugs worked out and no crashing and all that stuff. So when I get my hands on that, I'll do another review, of course, and I'm really excited to see what they do with that. And even if they have a decent charge for it, I'm more than willing to pay it if it's the best thing out there. So I'm excited for this update, actually. This is, of all the updates they've done so far since I've been using it, this is the best one. And again, only question is going to be for each individual person out there is how stable is it for you in terms of how often does it crash. And again, just a caveat, if you're using Autosave, remember, I would also save one extra version of the file somewhere else in case, like I said, you accidentally delete right as it's Autosave or something like that. You don't want that tragedy. So other than that, I think a pretty good job by the developers here. Some other things that I don't think are stated in the update, it seems, for me at least, the movement of the supports when I drag them around and move them, it seems smoother. It doesn't, like the supports don't jump around as much, which it used to do for me a little bit. Now it's a little smoother acting. I didn't see that listed in the update, so I don't know if they actually did anything or whatever it is. It's just working better for me. But overall, I mean, I'm pretty excited. Like I said, just being able to batch change contact depth and diameter, to me, is huge. The improved view from underneath, huge. Autosave for some people, like I said, is going to be important. Maybe I'll even use it as long as I keep doing what I said, which is save an extra copy, because I have lost work and it's frustrating. So maybe I'll use that autosave feature sometimes. Hopefully I won't have the tragedy where I forget to do the backup file, something wonky happens and it gets autosaved, and I won't be so happy. But hopefully that won't happen. Other than that, like I said, overall, I think this is a really, really solid update. And I know they were pretty happy about it and kind of like bragging that they released this update with all these functionality changes. And I'm going to have to agree. The other thing I didn't talk about, because I don't really care that much about it, because the models I get don't tend to need to be fixed, it doesn't seem like. But they have a function where you can fix a model that has the vertices wrong or inverted. So if you see dark blue on your model and then you hit the invert, they would then show up as light blue. Then you can hit fix and you can theoretically correct those. Now, the 2 times I've tried it just to test it out, 1 out of 2 it crashed my computer, so I won't be using that one. Anyway, that's about it. I didn't want to make this video too long. To sum it up, yes, I think everyone should download it and at least try it. And if it's stable for you, you're going to love it. If it's really unstable, then uninstall it. And if it's moderately stable, like it seems to be for me, I'm actually still going to use it, I think. Now, maybe my opinion will change in a few days if it starts crashing more or less. Obviously less, I'll be even more favorable. If it starts crashing more for any reason, less favorable, right? So that's it. Hope you learned something. Hope you download this new version of Chitubox, and hopefully it works for you. Hopefully it's more stable for everyone out there than it is for me. That would be my hope, and get you better results, faster workflow, better supports. That's it. Hope this helps you guys. Thanks for watching. Please like, please subscribe, please check out my other videos. I'm finishing up some resin review tests right now, so I'm going to have, I think 2 or 3 resin reviews coming out very quickly now. Plus, I'm wrapping up a video on where to place heavy, medium, and light supports. Knowing the settings is one thing. This video coming out is going to help you understand where to put those supports. And I don't mean in terms of putting them on an island. I mean, what's the right spot to use a heavy versus a medium versus an ultra light. So stay tuned for that as well. Thanks. Happy 3D printing.